In this video, we're going to take a look at the crypto space, specifically Bitcoin itself, as well as GBTC. And what I've done over the last week or so, I apologize I haven't done a video in a while. I've spent a lot of time looking at Bitcoin and GBTC. I've had many videos on this. Some people have commented that my videos on, especially on GBTC, have been very useful, have been very reassuring. And so I want to take some time to show you some more work that I've done looking at price action, looking at cycles, or the previous cycles with Bitcoin, and then looking at and comparing GBTC. I've posted all of these things on Twitter before, and so I wanted to put it all into a video here. So hopefully we can make this short and sweet, but also worth the time that you spend here. Thanks for joining me here on Markets with Markets for Millennials. So taking a look at Bitcoin to start with, you're looking at basically an overlay of a couple of different things. So to start out with, if you follow my mouse in the top right, I have this these converging gold lines here. The long story short is that I've been saying I've been targeting as early as July, but potentially as late as October or early November for Bitcoin's cycle peak. As I continue to see the price action, I'm falling more and more in line with some of the views of conquering the markets, and in that it looks like we're going to look at mid-September, somewhere in that neighborhood for the peak. And so this marks around that time where I think it's going to be. I've also done some work at log scales and things like that. I'm not showing that in this video. But what I am showing you here is I've got an overlay. I'm keeping this view. I'm not on auto or log scale or anything right now. What I did was I created a bars pattern line of the previous two cycles, and originally I adjusted them to match the percentage, exactly the percentage from the halving, which was back in May of 2020. So I started them there, and then I matched them by percentage. It took a little bit of time to work it out, and I got a chart that if I were to go over and show you guys what that looked like, it looked like this. Okay, and so obviously it's not entirely helpful. It does kind of show you that we are in between cycles. We definitely didn't double wave like in the first cycle, and we are right now outperforming the second cycle. So what I did instead was I lengthened the first cycle, and I scaled it downwards a little bit so that the price action movements would be a little bit closer to my current chart. And then I took the second cycle and I shortened it. And my criteria for the lengthening of the first cycle and the shortening of the second cycle was I wanted it to match up with this September 2021 date. Okay, and so by doing that, it does, once again, like I mean, we've already seen it. We've already looked at the price action, and we've already said that we're in between first and second cycles in terms of price action. But what I've found is that doing this has been really helpful in lining up our dips. So I'm going to expand this out a little bit more so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. Recently, Bitcoin's price action has been very volatile to the downside. We have had a couple of up days recently. Here I am on the 8-hour time chart. If you just pay attention to the price action again, once again seeing that the pink line is the second cycle and the yellow line is the first cycle. If you actually look, you can see we're following along pretty closely if you extend the first cycle and shorten the second cycle. The dips and the peaks are very close. You know, forgetting about just the cycle that we're in right now and its comparison, even comparing the first two cycles. For example, you can see right here, we have kind of some price action to the top side. you can see that right here we have a dip, and right here we have a dip. In the second cycle, this was kind of a prolonged 30 to 40% pullback. Not quite the same thing here, but obviously that was also in a double wave. And look at what we have here. We've been consolidating downward. And even if you want to look at this in terms of over the last few months, the price action as it's looked, it's pretty close to the second cycle for sure. Okay, so that's kind of cool to look at. And then if you're trying to think of like forward price action, what could this look like going forward? Look at the price action here. This is going to be part of the next leg up, right? So our price action here is going to probably work its way somewhere up here, and then it's going to take a big nosedive. So if you look on our second cycle, if you pay attention, we've got, the dip that comes after this next rise fell almost down to the recent peak before the dip, as you can see here. Boom, boom, right? So I mean, whatever happens next, we could see a pretty sharp pullback afterwards. You see the same thing in the first cycle. It comes up, goes sideways. We have a huge sell-off, one of those shakeouts, and then we come right back up in a V, and then we move into the parabolic price action, the blow-off top from there. So it's really cool to be able to see the price action in this way. And so I think if I go to auto now, we're going to obviously see a little bit more closely. So you'll have to forgive me on the messiness of the chart because of this pink line. We are about to test this descending trend line on Bitcoin. Obviously, I think if the model is still correct, then we're going to continue to see a rise. I imagine that what's going to happen, as you can see, if we look at the second cycle here, after we have this kind of V up, we kind of consolidate sideways for a bit, and then we shoot up into new all-time highs in price discovery. I suspect that's going to happen. If it takes a day or two, or if it takes a week or two, it's not entirely certain. One thing that I've observed before is typically in this cycle, on dips, whatever the length of time from the peak to the valley to the low, the near-term low, it's usually slightly longer than that on the recovery to new all-time highs. So I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head what that is. We'll take a look using an info line here. We had almost about a 27-28% pullback. It took 11 days. So going by that logic, then I would bet that it's going to take 12 or 13 total to go back to new all-time highs in price discovery. So from that low, we're looking at probably later this week at the earliest, or it could be soon, or it could be later. It could be a week or two. Okay, so that's kind of the near-term outlook. Everybody's been paying a lot of attention to Ethereum lately. Ethereum has had this massive move, but that's normal. So people, I think what is happening is people have been seeing Bitcoin sideways for a long time. They're kind of getting tired of it, and because people don't have the right perspective and don't really understand Bitcoin or the cycle, I think they're taking some people, I don't think most people, but I think enough people are taking some money out of Bitcoin and moving it into Ethereum. And I think that's why we're seeing the movement that it is. It's helpful to remember that Bitcoin is what makes all the other cryptocurrency, everything else in the crypto space, it's what makes everything else go. Whether it's because people think Bitcoin is expensive or they're just trying to find the next best thing, Bitcoin is the main driver of it all, and everything else is just speculation. I know that Ethereum, maybe this is unpopular, I know that Ethereum has some use cases for it, but in the end, everything is about Bitcoin. And I think Bitcoin is safer and smarter in the long term. But, if you're into any of the other coins, any of the other crypto space, bravo, and enjoy the ride. Just be aware that once Bitcoin starts its bear market phase, everything else is going to come down to And just as a lot of times the altcoins will outperform Bitcoin during the bull market, they will also decline at a higher rate than Bitcoin in the bear market. So just keep that in mind. All right, now let's go to GBTC. This has a lot of people buzzing. There's a lot of things going on my chart, so I'm going to do my best to try to change, get some of this off the screen for you guys. I'll keep that on the screen. Let's see here. I'm gonna make sure that I'm doing the right things here. Okay, good. So what you're looking at here on my screen is I had a line just like I did with Bitcoin. What I did this time for this or actually, you know what? Let me show you what I did first. A long time ago, and if you watch my other GBTC videos, you'll see me talk about this. Basically, going off of the previous cycle, I guesstimated where GBTC was going to have long sideways consolidation periods. And so what was really interesting was we had one of those right here. We've been consolidating around this blue line. I haven't changed the blue line. I'm not changing it because I think it's a good guesstimate. And I also want people to see, as I show these videos, I want people to see where my guesstimates were and just to show the accuracy of how I've tracked GBTC. So whether you're going from this first peak here, which was the beginning of January, or whether you're going from this peak, which was in February, it doesn't really matter in the long run. What you're seeing is sideways action and along this line. And one of the things I've said is it can take 2, 3, sometimes even 4 months for GBTC to consolidate sideways before moving upward. And going off of, if you start from the January 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, from that week, and you count out how many days it's been since this high, we are at 117 days. And so we're right at the tail end of the long period of that. If you go from the actual high, then it looks like we're at about 75 days. So we're approaching 3 months from the actual high, and we're at about 4 months from this first little peak here back in January. And so what that means is we're on the precipice of a move. And if you just pull back for a second, so we're looking at the high, potentially around mid-September, somewhere around here. So why don't I put a vertical in right around that time? So I'll make this gold. You guys are watching me do my work right now. Yeah, so why don't we do it that way? All right, I'll squeeze this down a little bit so it's easier to see. So this is where we're potentially where we're going to get our peak. I have this blue box here because it's this blue box is where I suspect the price is going to go vertical in its next move up. And this move could be anywhere from 80% to 200%. My guess is it's going to be somewhere close to 90 to 100% of a move. In fact, my blue line here is at about 96-ish, 97, somewhere in that area. It would not surprise me if we undershot it or if we overshot it. So this blue box represents where I believe the price action is going to begin moving. Okay, and these moves these vertical moves that GBTC does take no more than 3.5 weeks to complete. And so, if we were going to start our move today, then 21 days means at the end of May we could be at this level. If we took 4 weeks, it would be the beginning of June. And I think that time period is perfect because, as I've said, Bitcoin undergoes 3 long consolidation periods. GBTC undergoes 3 long consolidation periods. So if we step back and look at GBTC, the cycle, we had this first consolidation sideways. It wasn't nearly as long as some of the ones that we've been in. This one was 64 days, so a little over 2 months before retaking the all-time high. So that was the first one. We're in the middle of the second one. right? And if price action follows previous cycles, then what this means is that we're going to have within 3 or 4 weeks, we should be up close to $100, somewhere, give or take $10, you know. So as low as 90 or maybe 85, some maybe as high as 100, 110, somewhere in this range. Essentially, to wrap up, I'm looking for this somewhere in that area. So, and it matches up perfectly with the time. So if it takes us 3 to 4 weeks, then we're looking at the beginning to the end of May, kind of as a time frame for when to expect things. So if I were to mark that on this time frame, it could be, let's see here, it could be as early as here and as late as here. So again, somewhere in this range, I think we're going to get the price action to go to, and then we're going to consolidate sideways, right? And it's going to take a few months. So like, follow me on this. If say in a couple of days we start a 3 to 4 week move, that's going to put us in around mid-June, okay? And then it's going to take about a month or two to consolidate sideways. I'm going to say closer to 2 months sideways, okay? So then that'll be July, August, and then that'll give us about another month to make the final move up to the all-time high. And I think that given GBTC's history, that's what it's going to do. So a lot of people, and I'm sorry, I don't have this up right now, so I'm going to go to it. I made a tweet recently. I'm going to show you this tweet if I can find it really quickly. Regarding GBTC, because I've been getting a lot of fuss about the premium versus discount. I posted a tweet about this. It's helpful to have perspective, okay? Well, first of all, remember that since the Bitcoin halving, GBTC is up over 300%, okay? So even though it has been trading around a 15% discount recently, it's all about perspective, okay? What other asset is going to move up 300% in less than a year? I mean, very few assets. I mean, I know the last year has been a little bit interesting, but suffice to say, that's not normal, okay? So I put here, even if GBTC traded around a 15% discount for the rest of the cycle, if Bitcoin reaches $100,000, that's still $80 GBTC. I think it's going to overshoot that. In fact, I think GBTC is going to be closer to 200. If Bitcoin goes to 200,000, it's $160 GBTC. If Bitcoin goes to 300,000, we're looking at around 240 GBTC. And if Bitcoin goes to 400,000, it's 320, right? And this is assuming that GBTC is going to stay at 15% discount. However, I think if Bitcoin, if I can get back to all of my other charts, I think that if Bitcoin runs, right, if we pull this back, let's see if I can get this figured out. Ooh, whoops. If Bitcoin runs, right, if we get some of these runs on Bitcoin, especially to the parabolic blow off top, GBTC is not going to stay at a discount. I don't care what other funds are there. When Bitcoin starts that move, it's not going to stay at a discount. I'm just convinced it's not going to. So all these numbers that I put in my tweet are all things considered if GBTC trades at that level of a discount for the rest of the cycle, which to me is unlikely. Okay, and you know, I think best case scenario, or I'm sorry, I think worst case scenario, GBTC's at about break even when the cycle is at the top, which is just gravy for me because I got in early. Okay, but if it's at any sort of premium, then that's I'm a hero, you know. So that's one thing to keep in mind, all right? So what I'm looking at, let me go to the daily chart here. It's not much of a difference on GBTC, but what I'm looking for here, to go back to my layers, go to my layers here. Okay, what I did here was I adjusted GBTC from the last cycle. I made its percentage, I adjusted its percentage to be equal to what it would be if it started at this cycle's halving. Which would put the high around 337, okay, if it followed the same price action, all right? And I also shortened it, or I moved the cycle so that it would be as long as the current cycle, or so that it was starting at a certain point where it would end at the proper date. So here's what's cool. Oops. Here's what's cool. So I barely, I mean, all I did was move the scale inward, move the cycle inward. I didn't adjust it up or down in any way. The old cycle follows kind of my pattern here, okay? Now, again, my lines are guesstimates, right? But you can kind of see this cycle is, even though it's a little bit earlier, because this cycle was, you know, is happening, unfolding faster than the previous cycle, you can kind of see we're following similar price action. We've come up, we're consolidating, we're gonna have a move up, we're gonna consolidate, and we're gonna have a move up. It basically fits exactly what I've been showing. So hopefully that's something that gives you some more perspective. Again, just looking at Bitcoin and GBTC. There's still a lot of ways to go in both, okay? But you just have to relax. Don't FOMO, okay? Don't FOMO into momentum. Don't chase the momentum, right? If it's taking off, right? I mean, like, honestly, if you're just gonna buy and hold, okay, buy at any time. But if you're trying to trade, if you're trying to leverage it all, don't buy into the FOMO. You gotta buy on the pullbacks, right? You have to buy, right? You have to buy on these dips that we've seen. That's when you buy, or that's when you lighten up a leverage position, and then on its way up, then you increase your leverage, okay? But if you're, you know, like, don't FOMO after the momentum, because otherwise, like, again, you got to have the right perspective. I'll go to back to GBTC for a second. I had some Twitter interactions with somebody who let's see, when did they buy? So they bought GBTC when it was right around here, okay? This was around the 48 level. And, you know, so that came just after this huge move. I mean, it came after this move, and they don't understand GBTC, nor do they understand how it tracks based on what Bitcoin is doing in terms of its own consolidation and movement, right? And so because they bought it here, they got mad because it came down here, and because it's consolidated sideways, and because of the discount, okay? Well, if they're planning on holding it through the rest of the cycle, they've got nothing to worry about, because even if it's at discount, as I said here, even if it's at discount, it's going to be higher at the end of the cycle than it was right here. If anybody thinks that Bitcoin is going to stay, or I'm sorry, that GBTC is never going to get higher than $48 or $49 again, is crazy. They don't know what they're talking about, right? So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that gives you some insight on the cycles. Hopefully that helps you see what's going on with GBTC. Just hold tight, have some patience. Don't be in a rush, all right? The best thing to do is just wait. If you can't handle waiting, if it's stressing you out, watching your portfolio, if you have GBTC, or watching your crypto wallet, if you're holding Bitcoin, if it stresses you out, walk away. Come back in August or at the beginning of September, and then be pleasantly surprised by what you see. All right, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.